Meeting of the Climate Change and Nature Recovery Service Transformation Committee. I hope you've all had a lovely summer. And here we are starting back on the 1st of September. Have we got any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from councillors Chris Evans, Andrew Stevens and Andrew Lewis.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest anybody needs to make? No, seeing none, I will carry on. So approving the minutes of the last meeting. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to have a look at these. Is somebody willing to propose those? Maya, Councillor Baker, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Keaton, thank you. And all in favour? I think we agree that those are a true record, so thank you for that. Right then, so without further ado, we've got two substantive items on the agenda today, both connected to our nature recovery agenda. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Hopkins in Councillor Stevens' absence, just firstly to briefly introduce the first item, which is on the artificial grass position statement.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. What I would say on behalf of Councillor Andrew Stevens, who has asked me to attend today, but unfortunately he's not very well, so you're stuck with me, unfortunately. What he has stated, he is really happy with this report. He thinks it's a very sensible way forward. In the introduction, this is not a carte blanche ban against any artificial grass across the authority. This is working with our contract holders, particularly, and private sector to see what advice we can give. And particularly in education, what we're not saying is schools that cannot use this, particularly in areas where there is no facility like green grass or it's just full of concrete. What we're not saying, they cannot use artificial grass in them areas, so they will be exempt from this policy as well. So I got nothing to add to that at this point, but back to you, Chair, because I know that Councillor Andrew Stevens is very happy and look forward to this to come into Cabinet after this process.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is the culmination of a bit of work from this committee, but I'll hand over to Penny Griffith, who's gone away and done all of the hard graft since we last met to discuss it. So over to you.
A red button, thank you very much. Yes, right. So this I've come back today with the draft position statement for the committee, and this is off the back of the meetings that we had back in January. The work on artificial grass, we've been looking at this within the Climate and Nature Recovery Programme Board and the Natural Environment section for about 12 months now, and looking at the options and some of the issues around artificial grass. And so what I've brought back today is a position statement or a draft position statement which looks at two elements. Firstly, some of the issues with artificial grass and the areas that we will use them and we are not, as a council in our public spaces, looking to use them. And the second part of the report is very much around how we raise awareness and share understanding about, in particular, some of the environmental impacts of artificial grass. So if I just run through would you like me to run through some of the environmental impacts? So the environmental impacts are sort of quite wide and cover a number of areas, starting off with biodiversity. So artificial grass tends to impact and create habitat loss and impact on the soil ecosystem health. We obviously also have a problem from microplastic pollution, which can run off artificial grass and go into the habitats and the ecosystems. In terms of climate change, artificial grass can get very, very hot, particularly in the summer periods, where it can contribute to something called the urban heat island effect, which is where our urban spaces heat up, and then that can have an impact on the area around the microclimate around our urban spaces and can be uncomfortable for people and our wildlife. It also reduces our capacity for carbon storage potential within the natural ecosystem where we have artificial grass covering our soils and those ecosystems. It's quite a resource intensive production process. So obviously there's a lot of water and energy involved in that, and manufacturing, a lot of petroleum-based materials. And as I've said, it can also increase surface water runoff, which is another impact for climate change and a concern around around flooding. In terms of lifespan and recycling, it's non-biodegradable currently, and nor is it currently recyclable in Swansea. So it's actually quite a hard item to dispose of. And I've already touched on the microplastics and the chemical pollution, but those can be quite significant in terms of running into our waterways, and also the maintenance chemicals. The chemicals that can be used to maintain artificial grass can also run off and pollute our waterways as well. So there's a number of environmental factors around the use of artificial grass. And what the position statement really looks at is it looks at the public space, the council's public realm, and public spaces where as a council, we will look to no longer use artificial grass where it has been used. And we will always use it as sustainable or a nature-friendly alternative, which can be anything from obviously natural grass itself, which has a lot of benefits to the climate and biodiversity, but also it can also include other things like stones, permeable paving. There's a number of different substances that can be used depending upon how that space needs to be used. As Councillor Hopkins referred to, there are three main areas where we would not be recommending or would be exempt from this policy, and they are our sports fields. So obviously we recognise that the 3G sports pitches need to have artificial grass and 3G, 4G, 5G surfaces. So they would be exempt from this policy, as would the use of artificial grass in school playground situations, school situations. And also there may be some other temporary situations where we may need to use it in areas of high footfall where it may be really important. The other thing that the report really picks up on is how we may look if this position statement is adopted, how we may look to apply it. We would not be asking any parts of the council to immediately remove artificial grass, but when it comes to the end of its life or there's improvements being made to the space, we would be looking then for more sustainable options. And then finally, I'd just like to add is alongside the position statement itself is the need to do some awareness raising and the desire to do some awareness raising, and that may be through social media, it can be through information to work with our contractors and our partners, and also with the public as well around some of the problems with artificial grass and some of the alternatives.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, so committee members will remember that we sort of batted this about as a concept previously, and there was a lot of support because of the myriad environmental concerns that you've outlined there for us having a position statement. Thank you for the work that you've done in the meantime. I think what's really positive about this is it's very concise and straightforward. It doesn't need to be War and Peace, does it? It just explains what the problem is and what we propose as the solution. There's a sort of a two-strand approach going on here. There's what we can control within Swansea Council's own the facilities, the land that we own. So obviously we would be able to almost enforce this as policy in those spaces, with the notable exceptions that you have outlined. I think it would be worth us adding the word school to point 2 under acceptable use of artificial grass, because I don't think any of us want to see artificial grass in our parks, and I don't think there's any intention for us to ever do that. It is specifically around schools that have not got that green space facility within their boundary to have that option for them. So if we can just make sure that's really clear, and then obviously sports pitches was something that we discussed at our last meeting. So that's within what Swansea Council controls. The other side of this, as with our whole climate change agenda, is how we influence the wider, society, businesses, homeowners, renters, contract holders with ourselves to make sustainable choices. And I think the infographic version that you've done definitely reflects our feedback around some of the local nature recovery action plan infographics are really accessible and engaging. And I think, that does that here. And I hope will mean that people do just have in the front of their minds when they're deciding what to use some of the impacts, but also some of the alternatives, because offering those solutions, a bit more front and centre, I hope will be able to have a positive impact on our residents as well. So thank you ever so much. So the recommendations are that we recommend this to Cabinet, and that also we support a Swansea Council awareness raising programme as outlined. Before we just move to the vote on that, are there any comments or questions that people wish to make? Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a really good policy statement. Hopefully, in some ways, because I'm a bit more radical than that, but it would be a first step to some other things that we could introduce. I could imagine a world where there was some special supplementary planning guidance to do with developers and the use of artificial grass on new sites development. Another area I think that would be interested in the future to look at is any grants that are issued that grant monies couldn't be used for artificial grass. And then maybe potentially we would look at making sure that any of our contractors or anybody that we use for any of our natural landscaping, which hopefully would be covered by this anyway, wouldn't use any artificial surfaces of that nature. So those are the kinds of things. There's a next step. If we found this successful and an awareness campaign was good, we could embed the next kind of level of that.
Yeah, Councillor Baker.
Hi. I'm looking at the possibility of, we got new tenants coming in all the time. You get new tenants. New tenants sometimes will look at the back garden and say, oh, just put artificial turf down by there. Can we have it put into the tenancy?
I'll come back in on that one. I think that would be challenging to have it in your terms and conditions.
No, in the new, if they're
But I
taking
think-
on new
Are you
tenancies.
talking about having the information available in like a tenant information pack? Because we've got the new portal, haven't we, for
Yeah, recommending
tenants.
new tenants.
Yeah, as a
They're
recommendation.
taking over old council stock, and to put it in like a recommendation, please do not use artificial turf in the back or the front gardens.
I'll come to Councillor Hopkins. Go on.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't think he would be able to do that. I think we can advise. What we can't do is dictate their contract holders their property as such. We can be there to give the advice. I think the fact sheet is really enhancing, and including it within the new pack today would be a good idea. But we can't dictate to individuals what they use, the colour they paint or carpets. It's exactly the same. It's their garden. They must maintain it. But we can only educate them and give them the actual the fact sheet to do so. But we'd be up for challenge any other way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is the proposal that's coming through. So this infographic version be included in new tenant information as guidance, not as you say, dictate. Councillor Keaton.
Thank you, Chair. My concern, and I think one that would actually resonate with tenants, because I think that's a good point brought up, is the drainage problems. So if you bring up that as far as drainage is concerned, if somebody puts fake grass down over there, they're not going to help with drainage. And we already have seen problems with people with wetter summers, including winters, them actually being, getting far worse, at the very least damp in their homes, but more likely flooding. So I think we could put something surely in to warn them of that fact, because it will affect the building and it would affect others around them as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Keaton. We've got water management as one of the 4 environmental concerns. It doesn't explicitly mention the word flooding, but obviously that is what we mean, is that it contributes towards flooding. I just wonder whether we could add something that's a little bit more explicit around that one, because yeah, certainly across Swansea we're seeing areas where that is an ever increasing concern. Is that okay? I'm not seeing any other hands. Just picking up on Councillor Rice's point there as well, I think what might be interesting is to, obviously this goes to Cabinet now and will be launched, but in say a year, 18 months, for committee to think about how we look at, well, what's the impact of this been? Has this just been paper on a nice pretty wall, or is this having an impact? Getting some tenants' feedback on, you received this when you moved in, did it make a difference to your decision making and that kind of thing? But that'll be for a future committee to decide to put on its agenda, but it could be interesting to look back at. Lovely. Okay, so I'll move us to the vote on the recommendation. So apart from those two minor amendments, which is to include school under point 2 and to include an explicit reference to flooding under water management, are we in favour of recommending this to Cabinet? All those in favour? Yeah. And are we in favour of the awareness raising activity as well? Yes. Lovely. Thank you very much, Penny and team. So on to our next item, which is declaring new local nature reserves. I will once again come to Councillor Hopkins for a brief intro on this one.
Thanks, Chair. Got nothing to add to the report. And there was a lot. This has been talked about for some time. I know the Cabinet had a briefing some time ago, many years ago, actually, on this issue. And I welcome it. I think subject to availability of funding. So I think it makes sense. What I will say, the list is not exhausted. There is availability to expand this as grant funding becomes available as well. So more than happy to hand over to officers, back to the chair on this one. But I know Andrew Stevens is very, very supportive of the project as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll hand straight over to you, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce this report. So today we're sharing an update on Swansea's exciting programme to designate up to 16 new local nature reserves, our first additions in almost 30 years. These proposed reserves span the length and breadth of Swansea and include some of our best loved parks, woodlands, coast and lesser known wildlife corridors. So for anyone unfamiliar, local nature reserves are areas of land protected not just for wildlife, but also to ensure everyone in Swansea has access to high quality green and blue spaces close to home. The council can only declare local nature reserves on land we own or lease, but it's key to safeguard and celebrate places that matter for both biodiversity and local communities. This work also is contributing to global nature recovery targets. And so this programme builds on extensive internal consultation, as was mentioned, with council teams, cabinet and ward members, helping us identify the sites with the strongest case for protection and support. So right now we're in the heart of our public engagement phase, working with an external consultant to reach as many local residents as possible, both through online and through on-site activities. So you can access those links, and it should be on social media soon. All community feedback, along with ongoing input from officers and members, will help shape which sites we proceed with and the detailed management plans for each of them. We're also undertaking ecological surveys to make sure the right habitats are protected and management plans are realistic and effective. The aim is to consult with Natural Resources Wales, as we have to as part of this process, to bring forward a clear deliverable proposals for the formal declaration at a full council meeting. And ideally, we're aiming for that before March 2027, in line with our current Welsh Government funding. So today we're asking for your comments and reflections. You'll see in the report that our recommended approach is to move swiftly to protect as many eligible sites as possible within the current funding window, with a view to building a lasting legacy for people and nature across Swansea. And yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Mark. And again, thanks for the work that's gone into this. I think councillors have had a lot of opportunities to hear about this, which is great, because that is an indication of really committed engagement, you know, with ward members that presumably spans the whole council. A question from me while colleagues are thinking would be, so we've got the 16 sites that are in the report, but as you said, this is about protecting as many as possible. So do I infer from that there have actually been other sites that have at this stage been excluded from that list, but that in future we actually could go even further than these 16? Is that fair reflection?
Yes, that's exactly right. So we did start off with a much longer list, and over the last couple of years, through consultation and engagement with lots of different people, we've kind of whittled it down. And yes, there's absolutely the opportunity to declare more in the future as they become suitable and viable. And also, just because a site isn't a local nature reserve doesn't mean that it's not important for communities and nature as well. We've already had some feedback about that, saying that why isn't my site included? And obviously we can't necessarily designate all sites. There are certain criteria we have to follow.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to look this way first. Any questions or comments? Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is excellent. It's a real game changer. It makes a real difference for nature recovery across the city. There are so many sites involved. which is good, and it's covering quite a lot of land. So it's definitely a great contribution for 30 to 30 by 30. I know, and I've already been in contact with Mark and the team before. I wish try to add more because it's always one of those things to do. But I think it's a great list already. The connectivity that it provides in the corridors, especially, I mean, without being too parochial, the ideas around the hillside corridor, which connecting some formal parks, some nature areas, some areas that could do with a bit more TLC, which would really improve the habitat. It's really good. So I've been out sharing it and getting quite a lot of feedback. There are quite a few people that are trying to add more sections or more areas, which are coming back through to me. So I take my apologies, please. I try to add too many in. But yeah, really good. And anything I can do as a local member to get the information out there or to communicate any of the aspects of it, because I have had quite a few questions about the implications. And I've just had to say to them, look, they're all positive. This isn't going to affect it being a formal park. This isn't going to affect X or Y, which people are asking those kinds of questions about. I think that kind of stuff is going to come back through the consultation that happens. But yeah, really good. And anything I can do, count me in.
Thank you. Yeah, I would reflect that as well, that every comment I have had has been, what about this as well? What about that as well? I haven't had anybody say, I'm not sure about this. People want to go further, which is kind of where my question was coming from, really. But I take that as a real positive that, the community are so, positive about this as a project. So brilliant. Is there anybody else who wished to add? Yeah, Councillor Hopkins.
Just as a local ward member, particularly for areas like Town Hill, when you think of the nature reserve there, the opportunities are massive, not just for them, but I think schools to be actively involved in that as well. I know Deb has been for many years been working very closely with CBU School and others. So it is good that we highlight the good work that goes on with education, and exactly the same for areas of preparation, exactly the same with the racecourse. I think to involve schools in that project as well is a must in reality, to highlight what is going on there. So really, really welcome the report, actually.
Thanks. And I wonder how the engagement that's going on at the moment, is there a specific strand around engaging with schools as part of that, or could there be?
We have been engaging with our kind of staff that work in the school in terms of direct connections through the council, and I believe our external consultant is running events across the county in key locations where hopefully they'll pick up some areas where there are key schools next to the local nature reserves.
Okay, from my experience of working with school councils, nothing is more rewarding, and you will get some amazing ideas for how the LNR could make a difference. So I think if there's any scope for the external contractor, like personally, I've got 5 primary schools with all I've got willing school councils. If there is scope for them to include some direct engagement with children and young people, I think that would be really, really welcome, and set us off on the right course in terms of materialising those benefits when we can declare. Yeah, go on.
I think it's right, and probably will highlight that in my opinion, at Cabinet, when it comes to Cabinet, that that will be, from where I am, all these areas should be included with local schools, just to get local buy-in as well as community centres and others.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will move to the recommendations, which is broad one, if I remember, isn't it? That we note the contents of the report. We've provided our comments. So I at this point, do we just say yes, we remain supportive, and yeah, as Councillor Rice says, we're all doing what we can, I think, to try and encourage responses to the consultation, and we look forward to seeing it progress. There was a recommended option in terms of going for the full 16 rather than a phased approach to declaration. I'm sensing the consensus around the room is that we would back that. I think protecting as far as possible in the time we've got. We'll take a vote on that then. There we go. So all in favour of the preferred option, which is the big bang approach of 16 declarations all at once. All in favour? Yeah, great. There we are. Right. So the last item on the agenda is the 2025-26 work plan, which is included as a standing item. for your information. One thing just to mention, I can see Rachel's on the screen. So at the next meeting, we've got the EV charging strategy update. With committee's consent, we'd like to add a closed part of the meeting to look at recommendations from the PPA report. Do you know the peer review of the council that was done as part of the WLGA? There's a recommendation in there for service transformation committees to have a look at. The report itself isn't public yet, so that's why we would do it in closed session. But I think having STC involvement in how we respond to that would be really valuable. So if people are willing, we will put that on the agenda. Have I summarised that okay, Rachel?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm seeing nods. I'm being advised to take a vote on it just in case. All in favour? Yeah, okay, great. Otherwise, the rest of the work plan stands as is for your information. And we will meet again on the 6th of October. There we are. Thank you ever so much for your attendance, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.